Thank you for being here. I am honored to be back at the Tulane Book Festival, and now up with T, talking about one of our passion projects. Clip, yes. So we, as you know, we did a book, T did a book, and I did a film about Ella, and we're here to talk to you about the process of that, of how you take the crafting of a book into the crafting of a film. And so I'd like to start out with the trailer for this, so you get a little sense of what you're about to hear.
I don't even know if she owns a pan, but she has one of the most amazing palettes that I've ever ran into, ever.
Ella Brennan, what an iconic name, what an iconic woman. I would say that there's no more important female restaurateur ever in American history than Ella.
She was always this grand personage who presided over a kitchen that was an incubator of talent.
She has this gift of being able to bring out the best in people.
Ella was a celebrity restaurateur before there were celebrity chefs.
As things started evolving, we became really a great team because I could really execute a lot of those visions that she had.
When Brennan's opened in the Quarter and then Commander's Palace, they immediately were elevated to the ranks of New Orleans restaurant royalty.
To me, every chef who came out of Commander Palace were a breed apart.
I always felt like Cajun and Creole crashed right here in the kitchen at Commander's Palace, and wonderful things have been happening all over New Orleans ever since.
Wolfgang's California, Danny Meyer is New York, Ella Brennan is the South.
And there's no way you can talk about New Orleans without talking about Ella.
Her life's work has permeated the whole landscape of American cooking, American restaurateuring.
Her parties were covered by the press. We met many, many famous people there.
It was always an amazing time just with these cast of characters literally coming through the house at all hours.
She has this incredible gene about people. She's practically a genius at that.
And thank you all for coming over.
She's like the pizzazz ambassador of New Orleans. I mean, she's in her 90s and she's just got this pizzazz. There's not another word for it.
Some of y'all never seen her skinny, huh? Those old pictures. So I wanted to do a book and did this book. Wanted to do it and talk about the world's most uncooperative participant. She wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. And I kept saying, but Mom, the kids in the family, much less all the young people in our business, don't know any of these things that happened. So, you know, I kind of wore it down and we started working on that. But then a good friend, Deb Shriver, said, you know, you really need to do a book. I said, well, working on that. And she said, you need to do a film. I'm like, well, that'll never happen. And here we are with filmmaker Leslie Iwerks.
It was my lucky day. Yeah, so I met T through the making of this film, and I had been making films for the last, well, now for the last 20 years, based in Santa Monica, and tackled films of all sorts, you know, from the depths of the Guatemala City garbage dump with my Oscar-nominated film to flying over the big wave surfers in Maui to chronicling fake news in Macedonia. These are just some of the, well, actually going forward, these are just some of the films that I've done, you know, from Pixar story to environmental issues like Pipe Dreams, Dirty Oil, both shortlisted for Academy Awards. League of Legends, following the #1 played game in the world called League of Legends by Riot Games. Industrial Light and Magic, worked with, you know, top leaders like Steve Jobs and George Lucas and Bob Iger, and just has some really interesting things to document over my career. The Imagineering Story is a 6-part series on Disney+. And then
when she takes me to the Oscars and we're walking in and Bob Iger waves at her, I'm like, you know.
But just recently had the opportunity to do the 100 Years of Warner Brothers story, which is a 4-part series now on Max, and that just debuted at Cannes last year.
I got to be on the red carpet with her, and I was just the +1 holding her purse.
But just a little background, I grew up in this industry. My grandfather was the co-creator and designer of Mickey Mouse, and he was Walt Disney's first partner in Kansas City, Missouri, and they came out to California, and he did Oswald the Lucky Rabbit and Mickey Mouse, and he was a technical pioneer of all sorts of inventions for the theme parks and the films. My dad followed in his footsteps for 35 years at the Disney studio, also Academy Award-winning, Lifetime Achievement Award winner, for all his amazing technological inventions, from 360 camera system that you see at the parks to 3D technologies, you name it. So there's a whole book on my grandfather called Walt Disney's Ultimate Inventor, The Genius of Iwerks. So check it out if you're interested in that subject. But I followed in those footsteps and just grew up behind the scenes at the Disney lot, and you know, the Disneyland, going in the back gate and seeing like the characters walking around with their heads off. And so that's kind of like how I grew up in that weird world. So just tackling a lot of the visionary leaders, it's sort of, the one thing that was cool was that when I was approached about this project, I had never done anything about a woman, a female, you know, leader, and I was really excited to do that. And I had never done anything in the food space. I'm always looking for a new subject to tackle that I really know nothing about. So this was a great opportunity for me to really learn about Ella Brennan, and so meanwhile, T was working on the book, and so while she was doing that, I was kind of filming these other projects. But I think once she got the book, you know, in the works, I was able to take that and look at that as sort of my starting ground. So T will talk to you about how to do the book, really.
Yeah?
Chapter.
Okay. So we're supposed to be talking today about how to make a book into a film, and that's what we're going to do. And so Leslie was explaining that we were thick into the book. We had already done another version that was not chronological because of the uncooperative main character, and that was a complete bust. And what really freed us up was our agent one day said, we said, oh, our favorite book that we like is Katharine Graham's, what was it called? Whatever, you know what I'm talking about. Washington Post book, unbelievable. And we said, oh, but we could never write a book like that because, you know, she just really tells every single, you know, bit of her life story and her family and dirty. And then she just laughed and said, no, she didn't. And we went, oh. So if you can pick and choose a little bit, and you don't have to put every little thing that ever happened in your life in the book, then she got more interested. So we went back, and really people just kept saying, we just want to know how Ella got to be Ella. So it just kind of had to be chronological. So what we did was we got with our friend Tim Traplin, the artist, and as I was writing the book, I would just tell him the stories. And you know him if you know my cocktail book, and if you know all our menus and everything that he's done. So I would just tell him a story. And so these are the chapter headings, and so it's a little New Yorker-ish and a little different than your average book. But this one is supposed to depict Mom's grandmother, Nellie Valentine Brennan. How about that? And she was supposed to be the greatest cook ever, and she was obsessed with her red oven, and that's the kids waiting. And she would make for them perfectly scrambled eggs, according to my mother, and sautéed bananas. And I promise you, yes, that led to Bananas Foster. But anyway, okay, so the next one. This is how she really got in the restaurant business. Our family were Irish. We started in a bar, of course, at the Absinthe House. And then they bought the restaurant across the street, Via Carré. And Mom was just this little, you know, sawed-off kid who wasn't even supposed to be down there. And she told her much, much older brother, who she adored, she said, you know, that restaurant of yours across the street stinks. And he says, well, smarty pants, go fix it. So that is how she got into the restaurant business. So every chapter here is, this is her talking about after work. That is what she said all the time. And so she was so young, she wasn't allowed to go drinking. But after work, Cafe Lafitte, which is not like it is now, but was whatever, 18 versions of that story. But it was just a wonderful bar. But she said all the really interesting people in New Orleans would gather there late at night to drink, and whoever was interesting coming through town, frequently famous writers, or if you were the director of the ballet coming, and she would get to meet them all there. And she just talks about it as this most exciting time. So that was that. So then, this is a little sadder. So then they were going to have to move the restaurant. Their lease was running out, and they had found Brennan's where it is now on Royal Street, but it hadn't even opened yet, and Mom gets a phone call and says, Owen's dead. So this depicts that day, and she drove across the street, and she says, it's back when the police were nice, because I was speeding, and when I told him what I was doing, he got in front and took me there and stayed with me all day and helped the family. So that was, not that much fun. This talks about New Orleanians will remember the year that they canceled Mardi Gras, and but it tells that story and many fun stories. But of course, we had our own Mardi Gras, complete with a float. It was a ski boat, anyway. And they went down the street. So just a lot of the stories that went along the way. And then this one, so then they go to Brennan's, and this depicts my mother and her siblings having been fired by their sister-in-law that day, just walking out the door. And I just love how Tim drew that picture with Brennan's drawn backwards, and they're walking out the door. So just gives you a little feeling. Then this is my glamorous Aunt Adelaide. Some of my friends here today, Liz Gessner and Mary Mack, and a bunch of you will remember that that's exactly what it was like, right? Aunt Adelaide would descend the stairs well into the party going on to make her grand entrance. And the stories that happened were just unbelievable. I used to always say I was upstairs, and Mom would be down there, and Aunt Adelaide would, like Bob Hope. I'm like, can you keep it down? I got a test tomorrow. I go to Newman, Anyway, so all those stories. Now this one's getting in, and now she really pushed the food forward at Brennan's and made it really exciting. And then she did it again at Commanders and was pushing it forward. And this depicts when that was going on. I really do think of it as the modern American food movement. And this is her and Paul arguing. And I can remember Paul constantly presenting plates to her that were just like, she'd say, Paul, it's all brown. And he'd say, did you taste it, Ella? Anyway, this went on nonstop. Anyway, so then this gets into how we do it. And this is depicting gang service and everything that goes into the restaurant business. And what's the next one? Then this is about mentoring. That depicts my mom, and that, if y'all remember the celebration dessert, that's the celebration refrigerator that defrosted by itself about twice a week and just melted chocolate all over the floor. Anyway, and then that's her mentoring my beloved Jamie Shannon, who's no longer with us, but he was amazing. And I promise you, they would sit like that. She had a stool in the kitchen, and she would just try to talk to him and get him to do the things she thought he needed to do. So then this is about, again, her great love of authors. I mean, there was a man, if any of you are remember Robert Ruock, one of the great authors from years ago, and her dear New Orleans friend, Peter Feebleman, and how many dinners did we have with Johnny Apple? I mean, it was so, she was combining the things that she loved in her life. And then the last one, this was Aunt Adelaide, no, this is Aunt Dottie. So this is depicting, so now Mom and Dottie are living next door to Commanders, and this is Tori bringing food to the back door. So they always said they had the best room service in America, and the best part was the dishes go right back. So anyway, this still happens every day. Anyway, and then Mom, I swear to God, believes, and so do I, that when you die, she's going to the saloon in the sky with Louis Fitzgerald, Fats Pichon, Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Fats Pichon, everybody you love, nobody you don't, and there are no hangovers. So anyway, that's where she is. So that's the book. I'm lost. Is it your turn?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Well, so, this is kind of the world that I walked into. I had this wonderful dinner with Ella Brennan the first night I met her. We had dinner at Commanders, and she just asked me so many questions, and we just had the most amazing conversation that I just will remember forever. And she was just so into you. She wanted to know everything about the stories I've learned about leadership and talking to different CEOs, and she's just a sponge kind of like me, and she was so cool. And I just immediately went, yes, I'm in. This is a film I want to make. We worked on just starting. So basically.
But I was saying to you, how are you going to make a movie about an old lady in a chair?
Yeah.
Because, at that point, that's where we were,
Right. And so that's kind of what it looked like behind the scenes filming with Ella. And she was so animated and so much fun. She was like 89, 88 at this point?
Yeah.
Something like
88.
that. Really what we just started doing was interviewing her in different locations. Not every location ended up making it into the film, but the key is to always try to, keep your look exciting. And for me, I had to figure out, okay, I looked at the book, and there was way too much in the book that I can put in the film. So it's really, what is the timeline for this? What is the format? Is it chronological? Is it flashbacks? What is it? So I determined, after mapping this up on the wall with 3x5 cards in our office, that we work out a 3-act structure and make it chronological. And the key to any documentary, as in a book, is turning points. What are the turning points that really affect a character's life? And, you know, in the book you can put a lot more, right? But in a film you have to really distill those down. So every act has a number of turning points that are the highs and lows. And for me, it was when she got kicked out of Brennan's, discovering her own strength. It was her building her own confidence after that, and to start a new restaurant with Commanders. And all of this is character growth, right? It's all fueled by luck and happenstance and where you are at, you know, at the right place and the right time.
Vieux Carré on Bourbon Street.
And this is...
The owner, Owen Brennan, likes to try the delicate...
Wait, hold on one sec. This is... I didn't realize the sound was on, but okay, let me just talk for a sec about this. So when you look at creating a timeline and the turning points, you start also going through all the archival footage that exists. So that's a huge part of making a documentary, is just scouring every single archival house, going through T's archives, you know, or family photos and things like that. And out of that came some really cool things that Ella had never even seen, and that was this clip of her older brother, Owen.
Vieux Carré on Bourbon Street. The owner, Owen Brennan, likes to try the delicate sauces concocted by chef Justine Callan of Toulouse, France.
So that,
Vieux Carré.
so that was, you know, a lot
Can
of...
I say that she,
Yeah.
so Leslie just shows this to Mom and Dottie, and they have not seen their brother alive since 1950 whatever, and I just remember them sitting there, and they're like, play it again, you know? Anyway, so that was just really exciting.
Yeah, so it's a gift to me as a filmmaker to be able to find these little nuggets that, you know, the subject has never seen before, or anyone has never seen before, and that's a huge part, 80% I think of the process of a film, is archival doc anyway. But I also look at the character development is to why do you care about this character? What's pulling you in, right? And so for me, it was Ella as a girl, it was Ella as a restaurateur, a sister, a wife, and ultimately a leader. And then how all these different aspects intertwine, and how they are tested, right? And then you got the plot layers. I look at filmmaking as a layer, like looking at an onion. There's layers of an onion. There's layers to a documentary. So the outer layer is kind of like the environmental, the industry or the world. In this case, it was the restaurant scene. It was the haute Creole. It was the modern American food movement. It was the bigger picture of the restaurant industry. Under that came the business story, and that business story is the restaurant scene. It's the evolution of, it's Absinthe House. It's Brennan's Vieux Carré. It's Brennan's, and then Commander's Palace. So it's the business, and then under that you've got family, the family dynamics, and the interplay between all the family, and then you've got Ella at the core. Ella's the core, inner strength and her frailties, and ultimately the biggest goal in any film is why do we care? And you have to make that. You have to get the audience to care, and so. So I'd like to share with you a little scene from the film that that really sort of sets up her foundation, and that's a key part of it. Is you really want to kind of figure out what's the inciting incident to a story, and what's the moment that's going to set them on their path.
Can I just say that when you're in the restaurant business, people always want to take your picture like that, and it's just not that attractive. They're like, take a bite. I'm like, you know. Anyway, sorry.
We had no customers, literally no customers. If I hung out the front door, I could see the line in front of Galatoire's. If I hung out the kitchen door, I could see the line in front of Arno's. And he would say to me, what are you going to do about it? I was able to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. There were two great cooks there, Jack Ames and Paul Boulanger. I'll never forget either one of them. They would let me come in the kitchen and I would be watching everything they're doing. I was learning the difference between beef, lamb, pork. I didn't know anything. So I kept learning and studying as many of the cookbooks as I could study.
She knew nothing about the restaurant business. She came right out of high school. I remember Ella reading constantly.
I don't know what I was doing. I was just learning and writing these menus and these recipes.
Although still in her early 20s, Ella showed determination. Owen put her in charge of buying, preparing, and serving food at the restaurant.
He was challenging me like crazy. He said, well, you don't really know anything. And I used to get so angry with him. You know, he was older than me, but I had followed him around as a puppy dog. I loved him. When I was a little kid, I was always following. He was 15 years older than me. It was almost like a father.
Ella attempted to gain acceptance in a kitchen full of fiery male cooks, not accustomed to taking orders from a young woman.
Well, the first thing you have to do is show these guys respect. You admire them and you appreciate what they're doing. When you develop that sort of relationship with somebody, it opens up and you can talk. It seems very simple, but it's not.
Working alongside Paul Blanger and his sous chefs, Ella studied, tested, and tasted her way through what would become her own culinary school.
Can I say something? All right, quiz. So you heard the narrator for the first time. Anybody know who the narrator was? Ah! Did you know, or did you just hear it?
It was up earlier, though.
Oh.
It was in the trailer. Sorry.
Pretty amazing, though. Patricia Clarkson, so local actress, local girlfriend of mine. And our moms were, you know, same age and similar gals, if you ask me. And my whole life, whenever I'd see Patty, she'd go, "How's your mama?" And I go, "How's your mama?" Anyway, and we still do that. In fact, Leslie and I are going to go see her in a play that she has in London in a couple months. So anyway, she's amazing. And I have to just say this, watching Leslie direct Patty when they were doing the voiceover was fascinating. First of all, I had no idea she could be that bossy. But then Patty, you know, Patty was being an actress, you know, and Leslie was like, "Okay, bring it on down. This is, you know, whatever about, we're doing this." And Patty was, boom. I mean, just, it was really cool to see.
Yeah, she has a lot of range.
She does.
Well, and then another part of making this that was so much fun was just filming behind the scenes in the kitchen and getting all the great food shots. And we really had to go back in time and create historical recipes, right? You had to go find dishes and go back.
She would want to make an old dish and put it on like a new fancy plate. I'm like, you can't do that. So I had to go find the old dishes and, you know.
Yeah, so we had to go through time and evolve the shots of the food, you know, through the eras, 70s, 80s, up to present day. The other thing that was fun is, so Ella was, you know, I interviewed her first, and I honestly hadn't done a ton of archival research yet, so I didn't know what photos were available to me yet. A few that you had and I'd seen, but Ella would tell a story in an interview, and it was very entertaining, and I just thought, okay, that's cool, I can visualize everything she's saying. And this scene was one of them, which was when they left the Brennan's Vieux Carré and they opened up Brennan's after Owen died. I found these photos from Getty, and these were all the shots of that. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. We can use, you know, it's a rainy day. It was fun. They had banners. They, you know, so I ended up cutting together this scene that I just wanted to illustrate how you take photos in an interview. You add music, you add sound effects, and you try to bring it to life. And I'll just show you this.
Our lease was up on May 31st, and we moved on May 30th. We went from one restaurant to the other. We served lunch, and over here we continued lunch. That day was rather extraordinary. The customers picked up the furniture, the wine buckets, and they went outside. They had ordered a jazz band. So the band took us down the street. It was silly. These people were carrying pots and pans over their heads and under their arms. It was one of the magical days. Nothing went right. The band was wonderful. They went right in the restaurant, set them up at the bar. They had drinks. And the world came in with them. It was hysterically incorrect, if you know what I mean. Nobody was behaving. Dancing, oh my Lord, they were dancing. It was like a little Mardi Gras. It was a party, it lasted a month at least.
You could just see out into the patio, and the patio had been planted, and it was all so lush. We went upstairs, and the stairway was always so beautiful. And I saw the main dining room and the bar. I mean, it was like, I couldn't believe it.
New Orleanians embraced the new and improved Brennan's, making it an overnight smash. Endless crowds poured in. Family debt disappeared. The good times rolled.
So that was a really fun,
Yeah.
you know.
Who y'all think orchestrated that little parade action? You know, anyway, I can promise your mom was making all that happen. So, but for her to tell that story, and then Leslie goes and finds all of that, you know, photographs was, you know, that's like magic for them.
I mean,
So-
that's the fun part of docs, is just figuring out what you have to work with and then how do you put it together to make it entertaining. And music is a huge part of that. And then also what's a huge part of that is verite footage, like shooting in the moment, following a character live. And that's what we were able to do with Emerald and Tori in the kitchen, where they could show us some of their process. So here's Emerald, you know, cooking some stuff and showing us what he did and talking to Tori about it. And then he was reminiscing about his time in the kitchen. And it was just really magical. And there was, so Ella agreed to come, and we got the two of them, Emerald and Ella, together to come, but they hadn't seen each other for how many years?
It's been several years.
So I filmed this little reunion and spent the day with Emerald of him telling, you know, me basically all his memories of Ella and how she shaped him. So I'd like to share that scene.
This recruiter calls me up and he says, look, I've got this man, I understand you're looking. And he told me his background.
It's so good to see you.
Good to see you.
You look wonderful.
And I said, oh, no. He's too young and doesn't have enough experience. No.
How old were you when you came here?
20, I just was turning 24.
Yeah, I thought he was a kid.
And that's when I heard through a friend of Ella's that they were looking for more of an American chef for Commander's Palace.
So I had said to this man, don't bring him down because I'm rejecting him right now on the telephone. No. Then he called me back a week later and he said, I'm bringing him down.
My interview with Ella was probably the longest interview that I ever had in my life because it literally lasted months. The process was a weekly conversation on the phone. Sometimes they'd last 10 minutes, sometimes they'd last an hour. So this went on and on.
So my brother and I decided, okay, let him come. And we decided, you worry one day and I worry the next day. We both can't worry on the same day because we had to run this business.
I relocated to New Orleans and began going to school once again. When I stepped in, the restaurant was ranked 10th or 12th already in America. So it was really well established and well known.
As Emerald came in, the first thing I did was send him to every restaurant in New Orleans to get a feel what the city was like.
I began exploring other famous restaurants here in the city of New Orleans. On days off, I would travel the countryside. I would visit fishermen. I would visit fishermen on fishing boats. And it became obvious to me through Ella, if you want to understand the food, then you have to understand the culture. If you understand the culture, then you'll understand the people. And by understanding that, you'll understand the food.
So y'all saw Emerald in that Volkswagen? By the time he left Commanders, that was a Porsche. I'm just saying. It's true. That is true. It's true.
He gave us that footage too. That was pretty funny. Well, so this is recording day with Patty and Deb Shriver in New York, and this is our offices in Santa Monica at the time, and you know you can see our 3x5 cards on the wall like old school. Now we do it with computers, but still there's something tactical about just putting 3x5 cards on the wall, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can do it a lot quicker, and everybody can look at it and study it and stand around it and talk, and so that was fun crafting this. And now, you know, the other thing about all of this is really, again, finding those low lows and then how to take a story arc, like a scene of somebody hitting their lowest low, but then coming out of that. And how do you tell that quickly? You can do it in a book a lot longer, but in this case, we had to sort of go there and then get out of it. And so much of the turning points for a filmmaker are the sound bites. So in this case, T really helped take us from the low to the high and the other sound bites as well. But I call them the springboard bites, where somebody says, and they were off. And then now your music can change, your editing can get energy, stuff like that, or humor in the sound bites to give it, just as you saw earlier, some funny things. So here's just one more example of kind of how we took an arc of a scene. This is after Ella got fired.
So many people will have such a life-altering setback, literally the project you've worked on for your whole life to be fired from, by family members no less. And she let us know that it was going to be a scary time, but she took it on as a challenge and never, ever looked back.
At 55, most people are kind of starting to think, well, maybe there's retirement 10 years down the road or something like that. But then to be starting from scratch with children, it's just unfathomable for me to even think of what Ella was going through.
And they had to start over in the middle of their careers at Commanders, which was a beautiful old institute that was very run down.
Ella and her siblings retained ownership of the family's 5 other restaurants, but combined, these businesses made less money than the well-established Brennans on Royal Street.
I'm old enough to have been here in the pre-Brennan's Commanders. It was okay. It did not make you feel, wow, this is a meal event. It made you feel, this is a meal.
I think people were very happy that the Brennan family had bought it because they could come in and do their magic with it. And at first, I don't know if people were really just a little bit afraid of what they were going to do here.
The Garden District, a wealthy and conservative neighborhood, was known for the most historically preserved mansions in the southern United States. The residents watched cautiously as this 19th century mansion evolved under Brennan's stewardship.
When they were here, they decided we've got to tell New Orleans that, it's kind of a new day here at Commander's Palace. We're shaking things up. I was riding my bike by one day and I saw this giant patch of aqua blue on the building. And I went, oh my God, they would not paint this giant building aqua blue. And I got on my bike and I'm riding home real quick and I'm going, oh, they really would. I know they would. They would just do it.
This beige building all of a sudden is this bright, bright blue.
And I ran in the house and I'm like, Mom, you are not painting Commander's aqua blue. And she said, oh yes, we are. It's a fabulous idea. It's gonna let everybody know that we're shaking things up.
And so everybody is passing on the street saying, what's going on in there?
Before they'd even come to work here day to day, though they owned the restaurant, this local food critic decided to review Commanders, and I mean, oh, wow. He just ripped it and said it was so awful that he wouldn't even give it a star or a bean or whatever they gave at the time.
I remember that guy.
He said it was a terrible restaurant. Well, down in my heart, I know it was.
Coping with a painful divorce, Ella struggled with the demands of being a single mother. To make matters worse, her sister Dottie was diagnosed with breast cancer.
The little sisters got cancer, and women didn't really talk about that, and usually when you said cancer, it meant die. Here they are in a pretty precarious financial situation. She's gotten divorced, she's got these kids to raise. There was just a lot going on for her to cope with. I do remember she just sort of charged.
I wanted to make Commander's Palace the best damn restaurant this country ever had. Dottie came down immediately and she was up at Able. There were 5 of us in that restaurant every day. And we were all supposed to do what we did best.
Did you all see that one shot like coming over the cemetery and you could see Commanders? So I've seen like every photograph you could ever imagine of Commander's Palace. And Leslie said, well, we're gonna do a drone shot. Now, I was on the aviation board and drones were brand new. This was, 6 years ago or something now. And so I didn't know her very well. And I picked her up and we're driving there. I'm like, now tell me about this drone thing. Do we have a permit? And she said, she was shuffling papers. She goes, I think the permit is in process. I went, And so here comes the drone guy, who, by the way, was totally flirting with her. And anyway, but he's supposed to be watching the drone, which you have to watch the drone because I guess the whole thing about a drone is it'll just drop. And so you have to really only do it in certain places. Every man that came up on Washington as they tried to get this shot wanted, hey, dude, tell me about that. Can I do it? Show me, how's that work? And the poor guy's trying to, the whole thing was a complete disaster. I knew I was going to be totally sued, but we did get the one shot.
Well, at least we didn't film over the back patio.
Then they wanted to film a jazz scene, second line, in the courtyard from the drone. But I'm like, well, there's so many people. Where's the drone going to drop? Anyway, it was filmed from the roof of the patio room.
Yes, we never did that. Yeah, so we, part of the fun of this whole story is just how fun Commanders is, right? And so, from the origin of Jazz Brunch and using the original music from the original Jazz Brunch playlist and, the Mardi Gras days with Ella Brennan and Celebrated Restaurateur, it was just great to be able to really bring that to life. And anything you want to say about just to me, it was like the importance of a restaurant. It wasn't, for me, for the subject of this, I really wanted to bring out that restaurants are very important. They are important to humanity. The hospitality that restaurants like Commanders can bring to a community is so life-giving, and not every restaurant can do that and be established for over 100 years, 125, 130. And so to me, that was really the core takeaway in bringing out that family atmosphere and that family, the community of the family, and that, just using each other's skills. Go ahead.
So, well, just this one picture where she was the float. The lady who ran Venus comes into Commanders one day, and she's so delightful. And she said, T, you got to come to the parade tomorrow and bring your mom. We're doing the great women in the history of New Orleans, and your mom's afloat. I'm like, okay. And so I go next door, and I'm like, hey, Mom, you're afloat tomorrow. Let's go to... Now, my mama loved a parade, so it wasn't hard to get her to go to a parade. So we go to the parade, and we're standing there, and now her float's gone by, and I just go, so how you like being afloat? And she goes, I don't like it at all. And I'm like, well, why not? She said, well, everybody in here besides Lindy and Chris Owens and me are dead. Good point, Mom. Anyway, but I think what Leslie's trying to... this is a picture of Truman Capote, and so these are all the things that you try to get into a book, and how does she pick and choose what to do? Well, one day, the Truman Capote story is Mom's still working at Brennan's, and it was going to be Aunt Adelaide's birthday, and she's like, what the hell am I going to give Adelaide? I only have till tomorrow. And so Truman Capote was there, and she knew him, not well, but she knew him, and she went up and said, Truman, would you do me a favor? You're busy tomorrow night, because it's my sister's birthday, and I'd like to give you to her for her birthday. And he said, what time? Okay? And so he shows up at the door. I answer the door at my house on 2nd Street, okay? I open the door. I don't know who Truman Capote is, okay? I open the door, and there's a person in blue velvet, head to toe riding outfit. Okay, so blue velvet everything, Jodfers with the whip, okay, and the little hat, okay? But I was frequently the door answerer because nobody was ever ready, okay? And I'm like, hi, come on in. And he's that little squeaky little boy. Anyway, so this type of stuff was just going on all the time. And so the real struggle at the beginning of the movie was what story to tell, which one matters. But I was insistent that we try to tell the story of what I call the modern American food movement. You all know in your lifetime, I had a front row seat. Food in America changed. When I was little, it was horrible. Not in New Orleans, but in the rest of the world, food in America was horrible. It was after the war, we thought frozen and canned was like awesome. We thought that was just grand, all over America. And restaurants in this town who not that many years ago, I read a recipe in a Food and Wine magazine that they used the cocktail sauce from Fruit Cocktail. I'm like, you said that out loud? Oh my God. Anyway, that's how bad it was. But we wanted to show that New Orleans had been at the forefront of pushing food forward in America. There really was Jeremiah Tower in California, I think very much so. And then Larry Forgione and some other folks in New York. But Mom and Paul and the family in New Orleans was doing that. And so we tried to couch it in that entire history. And so it's, making a book into a film is hard. It's just that she's really good at it. So.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll just like to show you the last scene. And this sort of, you always kind of try to tie up what's the takeaway at the end of a movie. What do you want people to be left with? And I'd like to share the ending.
Ella Brennan built a palace renowned for its pioneering cuisine. But beyond the recognition and big business, Ella cares most about extending a welcome invitation to her table.
The world changes so much. I mean, everything's changed. But somehow down in my deepest feelings, I think that people always want to go out and have dinner with friends. Enjoy the conversation and the food and the wine, and the wine. And I think that's one of the most civilized things that we have left on earth.
After 7 decades of service, Ella Brennan received the James Beard Lifetime Achievement Award for her positive impact on the way we eat, cook, and think about food in America.
Her life's work has permeated the whole landscape of American cooking, American restaurateuring.
I still think that there is a legitimate role for a restaurateur, as classically defined. And Ella's one of the great heroes when it comes to that, which is somebody whose job it is to say, this is how we're going to do things around here. This is the level of taste in all things. This is the level of decorum in all things. This is how we behave. This is how we relate to our community. This is how we treat people almost apart from what we put on the plate and what we put in the glass. That's being a great restaurateur.
There you have it. Yeah, so we have just a couple of minutes, but if you have any questions, we're happy to follow up. Yes?
How long did it take from the beginning of taking the book and making it?
Book?
Well, I mean, from the time we first spoke, and then you ran around the world for like a year, so take that year. Probably 2 years really working on it, but off and on, it was really, I think, 3.
Yeah, probably about 3. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Elaine Bolton. I live here. My husband and I and friends are at your restaurant every third Saturday in December.
Thank you.
Aw.
And when you complete this movie, make sure you show how she made everyone feel so welcome.
Aw.
And I can remember many times how Darren just coming to our table and just saying, how you guys doing?
Aw.
How you feel? Is everything okay?
Well,
Just make sure you show
Well,
that in the movie.
thank you. And the film is out.
Yeah, it was on Netflix for 3 years, and then it is on Amazon,
and
it's
Apple.
on Apple now. So you can actually go and type it in Google, and you'll find it. And you might have to rent it, but you can check it out.
Thank you.
On a side note, the last 2 years we've been here, we've been bumped from our garden room.
Oh. I'm sure that was my cousin Lally's shift. I would have never done that. Oh, I hate that. Yeah.
Because we always requested the garden room.
Well, let me say something to you.
Please keep Walton in mind.
Well, I got Walton right here. Walton. Garden room. But I'm going to tell you, and Mr. Darren, that we just redid the patio room. No, you haven't seen it. Did you go see it in the last 2 months? There's no booted. No booting at Commanders. Anyway, thank you. And you have to go see the patio room. I told Lally Brennan I didn't know you could spend that much on one room. So it's very, very pretty. And then we also just opened a creperie next door, which is a kick in the rear, Le Petit Bleu. Anyway, thank you. Thank you.
We have one more question in the back. Yes? Yes?
I have 2 things. First of all, that blue always reminds me of the Tiffany's of New Orleans.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But they don't have stripes, so too bad for them.
The second thing is, what happened with the Truman Capote story? I mean, like, what's the end of that?
Oh, just a wild night. I mean, he was just charming and, huh? Oh yeah, it was just hysterical, and I mean, they all knew each other a little bit, So they just had dinner, and it was crazy and fun. And this was so not uncommon at my house. I need to tell you. I mean, one night, I was a little bitty kid, and I have this memory, as my mom and my dad actually, and they come in, they wake me up, and they have this guy with them, and they said, "Do you know who this is?" And I said, "Yeah, he's the man in the TV." It was Danny Kaye. Anyway, and he became a really, really good family friend. I'm gonna tell you that story really quick. So Mom got him to be the first king of Bacchus. Do y'all remember that? My uncles started Bacchus, and Mom got all the first kings, and the first one was Danny Kaye. And so she had to call and ask him to come do this thing that had never happened yet, and he had no idea what it was. And he's like, "Daddy, just come do this. Be the king. It's going to be fabulous. You're going to have a great time. You're going to be on a float." He said, "Ella, I don't know. What the hell are you talking about? But I will come. But it's early. It's like February. You know, it seems like it's going to be cold, and I just have two rules. I mean, I don't want to be cold, and I don't want to wear a dress." So it's freezing cold, and you know that he had to wear a dress, right? I mean, and so they come by. That we were on the balcony at Brennan's because the parade still came in the French Quarter. You remember? So we're squished on the back. So the float is so close to us. It's the same float they have now. And so my family's idea, of course, was to give the king constant drinks, you know, which it was the guy, the bartender from Brennan's, handing him drinks. So he's hammered. He comes by, and he's on the float, you know, and they've got the microphone, and we're doing our Brennan drunken family version of saluting the king, you know. And so they're saying something to him, and we're standing there, and he says, "Ella, I told you I didn't want to wear a dress, and I'm freezing my balls off." Anyway, that is what the man said. They're like, "Shut off the mic." Anyway, it's just constant stories.
And your ballroom.
Yeah, yeah.
They had a ballroom too.
Yeah, nuts.
Dancing
So,
all the time.
anyway.
Who has a ballroom?
Miss Mary Madeline.
This is not a question. This is a comment, and all of you New Orleanians would. Your mother's daughter, Commander, is as lovely, as hospitable, as loving, and that's you.
Mary, okay, that is so kind. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. This morning I got a request for an Easter reservation, did I not? Yeah, that's what that's about. That's what that's about. That's what that's about. I did. It wasn't you, it was James, but you had to have known about it.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. What a great presentation.